Good afternoon.
I didn't say it.
You didn't say good morning.
I didn't.
That is good. So we ran a little late. We were gonna be early, and now we're late for being early, but we're still technically early.
We are still.
Because we were gonna do 1 o'clock today, but Crystal got to go early today. So
Because I'm a terrible employee.
we'll talk about that in your performance review.
I'm sure that we were. We will.
We will. So today we are talking about lumps. Lumps. Can you play a song now?
Sure.
Check it out. I'm gonna girl down at the disco. She said, hey, yeah, let's go. Look at your baby. You can let's spend time not funny and make sure.
It's not the part that I thought you were doing.
Oh, which
But
part
that's
did you
okay.
think I was gonna
I
do?
mean, similar to that.
Oh.
Amy was dancing off screen, though. None of you could see her.
Amy's here.
She is. She's participating in this today.
Let's see. I got her papa right here. He's right here.
Leroy.
Leroy, you want to say hi? Come here. Do you want to say hi? He's like, no.
Probably gonna knock over people.
He probably is. If everything comes crashing to the ground, it's Leroy's butt. Are you talking? Are you talking? Oh, it's scratching your butt? Yeah.
No one can see it.
Nobody can see what's going on. He's a cutie. So Leroy is here because we're going to do a little demonstration. We're going to try. We'll see how this goes. I'm not sure how much everybody's going to be able to see, but we'll try it. So let's talk
I
about
can
lumps.
play cameraman.
You
And
can play
Amy
cameraman.
could help hold him because it's her beast. So you could do that.
Yeah, that's fine. But so we're going to talk a little bit about lumps first. What to do if you find a lump, what we do, and all of that. So, yeah, what do you want to talk about first?
I guess you find a lump at home.
Yeah.
What do you do?
What do you do?
What do you do? Give us a call.
Freak
out!
Freak out!
No,
Well,
don't
that's
freak out.
what
Don't
most
worry.
people do. Like,
Yeah.
what is this? I do that. Sometimes I find a lump on one of my own dogs. I'm like, what is that? What? Oh God, they all have cancer. Oh my God. No, majority of the time that is not the case. Although some lumps can be cancerous. Just because there's a lump doesn't mean it's big bad, but you should get it checked out. So step number 1, you coming up here?
Yeah.
You come up here. We saw a little bit of your ears in the camera. So step number 1, make an appointment. Let's get it checked out. Because things like how long it's been there, what size, what it started out as, is it growing, is it not growing? What are you
I
doing?
found it on the couch.
Oh God. We can't have nice things.
No, you can't. This is why Amy's not allowed in
That's
here.
right. So changes of appearance, is there any discharge, does it bother your pet? And there's a lot of questions that go into that and the history taking when we're talking about lumps and bumps. So big thing is going to be the size of the lump. There are lumps that are so small that we really can't do much to test them. So a good rule of thumb is if it's smaller than a pea, we may not be able to test it. So at that point, it's either something that we decide to monitor and see if it grows, and test it if it gets bigger, or if you're Brittany,
Hey, Brittany.
she's not on Facebook.
Oh, that's true. She's not.
She's not on Facebook. If you're one of our technicians, Brittany, you freak out and just have it removed, and that's okay. I mean, that's not completely unreasonable. And certainly
Especially in
too,
certain breeds.
exactly in certain
Especially.
breeds, or if your pet has a history of aggressive lumps and bumps and things, then it may be better to just take it off while it's teeny tiny. And that may be something that we can do with just a local anesthetic, maybe a little light sedation. Some of them need sedation, some of them don't. And you could do like a little biopsy punch. Sometimes they don't even need stitches if it's small enough. So yeah, there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And there's certain appearances of lumps that can make us think even a teeny tiny one is more aggressive than usual. So like the old dogs, like the old Shih Tzus and poodles and things that get those little wart type growths, we can usually tell that it's a wart type growth just by looking at it.
And they usually have multiple.
And they usually have multiple, and things, the history, like, oh, they tend to break open really easily. It's probably a wart type growth, and so we'll take a look at that, and that may be something. If it's small enough, we're just like, we leave it be.
Or if you're really worried about it and you want to have it removed, then we can.
Yeah. But versus if you have a lump that's like dark black, well, now maybe we're worried about it being something like melanoma, and that's something that we take off, even if it's too small for us to test in-house. So when we take them off, we do typically recommend sending them off for a biopsy to find out exactly what we're dealing with, see if we got the whole thing or not, and if there's any kind of follow-up that we need to do. So follow-up can include things like a second surgery to take extra tissue in the area, or chemotherapy or radiation. It's a whole variety of things that we can do. So yeah, that's what happens when you find a lump. So you bring them in, we get a really good history, we ask you a million questions, and then we decide if we can poke it or not. So if we can poke it, how do we do that, Crystal?
So we'll take a needle. It doesn't have to have a syringe on it. Most of the time we do with a syringe. It just depends on the location.
Choice.
Yeah. Depends on the location, how big it is, what we think we're going to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we will insert the needle into the bump. And if you do have a syringe on there, you pull suction the whole time. And then you just kind of move it around to try to get as many cells as you can.
Yeah, and that's called a fine needle aspirate, or an FNA. FNA, Cotton. You don't know that movie? Another movie you don't know. Whatever. Dodgeball's awesome. So it's called an FNA, or a needle biopsy, is that we call that. Mm-hmm. So we're bouncing it around inside the tumor, trying to collect as many cells as we can in that little small needle. And most of the time, I don't think most animals care. There's some tumor types that seems like are a little pinchier than others, and some of them, like a lipoma or a fatty tumor, they don't usually care about those.
Yeah. And once the needle's through the skin, doing this around doesn't really seem to bother them. There's no
because there's no nerves there.
Endings there.
Yeah, there's
so
no nerves inside the tumor, so it's just going to be the initial skin poke that's maybe a little pinchy. So she's taking pictures. Because Leroy's being adorable, huh? So that's a fine needle aspirate, and so then we take that sample, squirt it onto a slide, and
that was a disgusting word.
Well, what other word is there?
We put it on a slide.
How do we put it on? How do you put it on a slide?
Squirt it on a slide.
Spritz it. Spray it.
Shmoo it.
Well, you get shmoo, but you get on this. You put the shmoo on the slide.
Okay.
The stuff is the shmoo.
You squirt it on there.
That's what it is. Squirt it onto the slide, and then we stain it. So we use special stain that highlights different areas of the cells, and different cells take different colors and that.
They're very pretty.
They're very pretty. Fat is really gorgeous under the microscope. It is. It looks like big bubbles of purple and pink, and
we know how much you like purple.
I love purple. So that's what we're looking at. We take that, look at it underneath the microscope at various powers, and from there, sometimes I'm like, oh, that's what that is. That's easy, like a fatty tumor, easy peasy.
Most of the times we can tell that just when we kind of squirt it onto the slide.
Yeah, because it'll look kind of greasy, oily on the slide, and it doesn't really dry because it's oily. So it can be really hard to get a really nice microscopic sample of a fatty tumor, but when we do, it's exciting. I'm a nerd. Shut up.
We all know.
So there's a lot of things that we can tell just by that. There are some things that we can't tell. There are certain tumor types that either they're an abnormal population of cells, and so they don't look how they should, or it's something weird that we just don't see very often. So when that happens, we have a couple options. We can either send that slide off to the lab and let a pathologist look at it and see if they can tell us. Quite honestly, a lot of times I'm disappointed in those results. And they're like, meh, we can't tell either. And I'm like, well, that's super helpful.
It may
Thank
be
you.
this or it may be this.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Maybe something really bad or it may be nothing.
exactly what I was asking you. So
Yeah.
cool. But they're limited because it's a very small sample of cells. So sometimes if we're seeing something funky, I'm like, you know what? We're maybe better off just taking that whole thing off and send off the whole thing so that we have a really good, reliable answer.
Well, a lot of times, sending those out isn't exactly cheap.
Right.
So it may be a third of the price to send it out, but then if they can't tell us anything anyway, then we're removing it.
Still stuck removing it, sending off the whole thing. So yeah, so we kind of weigh those pros and cons. It depends on what we're seeing under the microscope, signalment of the patient. Is this like a really old animal that we're worried can't handle anesthesia and it's going to require full anesthesia to remove that lump, or is this something that's quick and easy and it's a young healthy animal that we can do with just like a little local anesthetic? Okay, yeah, let's just send off the whole thing because that seems silly to even spend the money to send off a slide that may not get you an answer. So that's typically what we do. So we were going to show you if Leroy's taking it out. We're going to see if Leroy would let us show you. He's got a little lump.
Did we want to talk a little bit about, certain lumps that we kind of know what they are anyway, like on an intact female dog?
So, I mean, yeah, we can.
For the most part.
Yeah, so there's certain things that have what we call a gross appearance. So meaning just eyeballing the lump itself, its location, its shape, its size. Is it oozy? Is it not oozy? Those sorts of things, we may already have kind of a really good idea of what we're dealing with. And so we may not even do a needle biopsy on it. We may be like, oh, yeah, an intact female dog with a lumpy mammary gland, especially if it's all ulcerated and angry, that's probably mammary carcinoma. And there's really not a whole lot of point in me poking that. It just needs to go. So yeah, so there's times where we might skip over doing the fine needle aspirate just because of things like that. There's unfortunately, there's a lot of things that just looking at the outward appearance of it, you can't necessarily tell for sure.
Yeah.
And so that's why, there's places where they'll feel on something and be like, oh, that just feels fatty. But you don't really know for sure without doing the needle biopsy. So assuming it hadn't been tested before, if something's been tested before and found to be nothing concerning and it's not growing and it's not bothering your pet, then, we call it good. But a new lump or bump ideally should be tested.
There's been a few times that we've been surprised as to what it is.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, so there's one tumor type called a mast cell tumor that we commonly see in the bully breeds, so like the pitties, the bulldogs, boxers, like Leroy Brown, that they tend to be real funky. They have kind of a characteristic appearance, but they don't always look that way. So a lot of the times, the normal mast cell tumor is pink and raised. Sometimes it's ulcerated, but I have seen them look a lot of weird, different ways. It's really odd. I've seen ones that were like, they looked like giant skin tags. Like, I think if you just eyeballed it, you'd be like, oh, that's just a skin tag. All right, fine. Or ones that we thought were lipomas, and turns out they were mast cell tumors. So there's certain tumor types that they don't read the textbook, and so that's why you test them. Yeah. That's why we test them to try to be sure.
And a lot of times we can't just drain whatever it is.
Yeah, we do get that. Yeah,
that we can drain them, and that's not. Most of the time, that's not a thing that we can do.
Right. Occasionally, we'll get a fluid-filled cyst, but yes, it will drain. The problem is that it will probably fill back up as well, because there's like all these abnormal cells that are kind of forming this little pocket where you can drain the fluid out, but those abnormal cells are still there producing that fluid. So until you surgically remove it, it's going to fill back up.
I actually have one at home who has one of those on his side, and I will drain it just for fun, and 2 days later it's filled back up and it looks exactly the same.
Those are fun though. Like if I poke those and I don't have a syringe, needle, because I'll poke it and it goes pop. I mean, fun for us. Again, we're weird, so, things like, other types of cysts are not necessarily fluid filled, so those, we'll get that question a lot too, like, well, can you just drain the cyst? Honestly, and this is gonna be disgusting because I don't know how else to describe it.
Oh, Lord.
Sebaceous cysts, they're not cancerous, but they're usually filled with like chunky, cheesy funk.
Like cottage cheese.
Yeah, like that doesn't drain.
And
so
I love them.
yeah, I mean they're really fun. Again, really fun for us.
It's one of my favorite things.
Once they do break open, if we can like squeeze them, it's like a giant pimple sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Crystal channels her inner Dr. Pimple Popper.
I'm
has a
like
really great time with that.
YouTube certified dermatologist.
Basically.
That's what
So those are fun. Again, you see things like that. It's like, well, that's a sebaceous cyst. We don't have to poke that. We don't have to send that off anywhere. We know what that is. But yeah, those are entertaining.
They make my day.
We have problems. So
And if Amy and I are both here on the same day, it's a fight to who gets to it.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, Amy, don't squeeze it.
Yeah.
Dr. Owen's gonna be mad.
Yeah.
But then she squeezes it
It's
anyway.
because you want to squeeze it.
Well,
Not to do, but I asked
then-
for permission.
Then we have the lump that is not a tumor. It's
It's
not the
abscess.
tumor. Well, abscesses, yes. But I'm thinking even more fun than that. Our favorite little creature,
Oh, a cuterebra.
Mhm.
Cuterebra. Oh my gosh. Google
I
it if you
still
want to be
haven't
really grossed
seen
out.
one.
They're amazing. So a cuterebra is actually a fly larva that it creates this little cyst-looking bump, and sometimes they can be quite large. It likes to be around like the head and the neck area. No,
You
yeah,
guys may have seen a video
can be
that
up the
went
nose.
around about a kitten with one up their nose.
Yeah, I've done one of those. That's
Yeah.
super fun. That as that fly larva develops and gets ready, what's supposed to happen is it grows to a certain point and then it comes out of the little pocket, drops off, finishes its development, and now it's a fly. So yeah, they're little like fat, maggoty looking things.
It's just
They're super gross, but it's super fun.
I still haven't seen one, and it makes me really
It's
sad.
really satifying to pull one of those out. So
But be careful at home.
yeah, don't
You
do
see
that.
one, yeah,
Don't
do
do
it
that
at home.
yourself, because if you break it off, bad things can happen. So yeah, leave that to a veterinary professional. Plus, you'll just ruin our day if you do it at home.
Yeah.
That's not the reason, but we do love seeing them. What else? You got anything else?
Let's see.
You can't drain it. You can't drain the fatty tumors either
No.
because they're like jelly on the inside.
And I think you kind of went over, most of the time we leave these lumps and bumps alone,
Mhm.
especially if it's fat, unless it's growing rapidly.
Yes.
And then, in which case, have it removed sooner rather than later, because we've seen lumps that have gotten to the point where they're just ginormous. And especially depending on where they are, there was one that was like here, and it was just so big.
That big golden, the
Yeah.
golden that had the big one, yeah. So there was a golden retriever that had a huge. It was just a fatty tumor. It wasn't anything cancerous, but it was like big.
Yeah.
And so I was at least the size of your pumpkin head. And it was on his side, so it wasn't causing him any
That's
trouble.
not what I'm talking about.
Oh,
No.
I don't know which one you're
This
talking
one, I think it was like here or like here, and it was
The
just
armpit's
so
bad.
big
about.
that we were like, yeah, I don't know that we can remove. I don't think that it was
Yeah.
you. I think it was a different doctor. But we
Gotcha.
were like, I don't think we can remove that and get all of it, and without doing like a drain
Mhm.
to, that there's
No
this big
fancy
pocket
things.
now because you've just removed this large lump,
Mhm.
and now it's going to try to fill up, and if it does, you have to put in a drain so that fluid drains out.
Yeah.
And that's messy, and it can be, it can be a challenge.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, this golden, he was old. I think they didn't want to remove it initially because they were concerned about the anesthesia, because he'd had it for years. And like they just kept putting it off because they were like, I think it was like 11 when it first showed up, and now this dog's like 15 or something. Like it had been there for a really long time, but it was so big. It was pulling on his skin, so it was making it really uncomfortable because all that weight was just pulling. So we decided it was worth the risk to do it. He did awesome, but it was like this big, just fatty tumor. It was huge.
Yeah,
It was huge. So, and so things like that, like we don't want it to get to that point. No, we should have removed that years ago and it would have been even easier on him. There's also certain areas of the body, like legs, up around the head and the face. There's not a lot of extra skin there. You know, like those legs, that if that tumor gets real big, we get to a point where you can't take it off because you can't close it. That or you have to manage that as an open wound. And so then that takes a really long time to heal. So you're better off in those sorts of areas taking something off sooner rather than later, even if it isn't cancerous.
And even if it's not bothering them at that point, if it's growing in size, especially if it's growing rapidly, just take it off.
Yeah. Just be done with it. You ready to poke?
Sure.
I'm just real excited about poking them out.
Okay. Do you want me? I'll cameraman.
Oh, you're going to camera
Yeah.
you?
Oh, here.
Okay.
Here are your
My materials. So just needle and syringe. This is the same size needle that we use like when we do vaccines. So it's fairly small. And I think most people have seen vaccinations given. They don't usually react to it too bad. Just a regular microscope slide. And then you need a patient with a bump.
We
Where
would
do you have your bump, buddy?
the ones on his. Go over.
He's like, oh
Up and
no.
over.
He's like, oh.
He's
no.
moaning. Oh, are we doing this one on his?
That one right there.
Okay.
Let me get a little more.
He's a good one. He's very
You
good.
got this?
Yep, got it.
So he's got a little roly-poly bump here. It's nice and soft. I kind of pick it up. So this is what we're poking.
His mommy doing snuggle time.
So what we do, we just take this lump and I kind of
Oh, sorry, I kissed you and you sneeze.
I just kind of stabilize it between my thumb and my forefinger, and I put the needle in there. And then I'll try to like suction a little bit to get out a little sample of cells and bounce it just a little. And he doesn't really care. And then take it out. And we kind of examine the area and make sure that there's no bleeding. There's certain tumor types that will bleed. Right?
But he does, wee boy.
What did you do? Oh,
He's
go
like,
this
oh
way.
gosh.
Oh, I'm out of
He's
here.
out of here.
Bless you.
So,
Good boy. You want a treat?
watch your booty. Watch your booty. So then I took the needle off of the syringe and filled the syringe up with air because I'm going to use that air to force the sample out of the needle because the sample didn't go really far because it's not liquid filled. So it's just like in the end of that needle there. Can you hold
I will.
and demonstrate? I'll try not to squirt this on you.
Good job.
Yeah, don't squirt it on me.
And we just
Leroy.
shoot it onto the slide.
Oh, look, you can see a little.
You can see it's kind of
No,
maybe.
yeah, there's a little.
So it's a little like greasy looking.
That means it's fat, Lebo.
Yeah. So it just kind of bubbles up there, and we'll let it sit and dry for a little bit. But that looks
You want to stay in here?
like a fatty tumor. Leroy's like, well, it wasn't so bad. I might stay. I might stay here.
Jackie said that lump about
He'll be our friend.
or so.
Yeah. So with where his is at, it's not really growing, and it's just fatty. His is one that we'll just leave be. But if it starts growing at any point, we'll want to take it off. At least with where it's at, there's plenty of extra skin in that area, so we've got a little more wiggle room there. But he did good. He did so good. Now he gets to look out the window. He's a good boy. So normally we would take that slide, let it dry for a little bit, stain it with slide stain, and then look at that underneath the microscope. And then see some lovely little fat globules. They're so pretty.
Like me.
Like you. And then also depending on the tumor type, so if we're seeing something that's iffy on the slide, and we decide that we're going to take that mass off, especially if it's something that we know is potentially cancerous, one of the things that we'll recommend too before surgery is doing chest x-rays. And why is that?
We want to make sure that if it is something bad, that it hasn't spread to their lungs.
Right.
Metastasized.
Metastasized, that's the term for that. So meaning it has spread from where the primary issue is, so where the actual tumor itself is, it has spread elsewhere. a lot of tumor types, they most commonly will spread to the lungs first. So we're looking for basically spots in their lungs. Now, if it's something that's a microscopic spread, we can't see that on really anything. But if it's something that's more advanced, has been there for a while, has already spread, then we can see spots on the lungs. So if that's the case, that's going to be a time where we're probably not going to recommend surgery because it has already spread elsewhere. So it's kind of too late, unfortunately. So while you can get rid of the primary tumor with where it's at, you're not going to be able to take out the spots in the lungs. So it's not really worth putting your animal through surgery at that point. So then we'll go into like kind of a hospice situation where we'll keep them comfortable for as long as possible, pain meds and things like that, depending on what they need, and go from there. But yeah, so that's a thing that might get suggested to you too, depending on what kind of tumor we're dealing with. Yeah. Cool. Right. I'm looking at your scrunchie.
Isn't it cute?
It's very distracting. I'm like a fish. I'm like, it's shiny. Ooh.
She thinks I look like that dinosaur that has the big ball on
Like
the
the
tail.
the spiky ball. Yeah, I don't know which one that is. And like you could just like fling it around and hurt somebody.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Crystal and her lethal scrunchie. All right. Do you have anything else for today?
I don't think so.
For our late Facebook Live?
No,
late,
I don't think
late, early? I
Late,
don't know.
early.
Early, late?
Well, we were early and then we were late. So
Yeah.
I think it's late, early.
All right. Well, we'll come up with an even better topic for next week.
I wonder if maybe we should talk about eyeballs next week.
Oh, eyeballs are your favorite.
They're not my favorite, but I did just have. See, a lot of these things I feel like we start talking about because we've had something
Something come
happen
in. Yeah.
recently.
Well, sure.
So I've seen someone with an eye issue not
Okay.
that long ago. On my own, I didn't need you.
You didn't need me.
I didn't
You're
need
so
her.
smart. You're a doctor.
It's funny.
According to her child.
Yeah, so I went over to this person's house. I don't think
Because
she
it's a
would.
family member.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't think she would care,
Yeah.
but I'm not gonna say it out
Yeah.
loud. So went over to a family member's house, and I'm holding the dog, and I'm wiping the eye and trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm like, it's okay, and my son goes, it's okay, she's a doctor, and I was like, I'm not a doctor.
Where did you even get that? He's
Yeah.
funny.
I don't know.
He's really funny.
It was
Okay.
hilarious.
But yeah, you knew what it was.
I did.
Apparently it was pretty
Yeah, it was
pretty
gross.
wicked. But yeah, we can talk about different things that happen with eyeballs.
I can't wait. It's my least favorite topic.
Crystal gets really freaked out by eyeballs.
They're so well. It's not that they're gross. It's gross when things happen with them.
Mm-hmm.
It just hurts me.
So that should be great.
Hurts my soul.
Yeah.
Maybe you can
Yeah.
draw them a beautiful picture of an eye.
I could go back to my teaching days and I could do like a whole little like
I could hold
diagram,
a
a
board for
whiteboard
you.
that I could draw. Oh,
Yeah, you're
No.
gonna ask me all kinds of questions. I'm not gonna know what any of them are.
nobody wants us to get that much into detail on the anatomy of the eyeball.
I bet there's someone
I
out
don't
there
think
who does.
anybody cares. Well, they can just Google it then, or they can call and ask me.
I think they should just comment and
We
say
could
that
do-
they want a
We
picture.
could do
of
a
an
private
eyeball.
lesson about eyeball anatomy.
Yeah, they're gross. But
But yeah.
maybe I just decided it
We can-
on
yeah.
the live TV.
That's fine. We can commit to that. We'll
Okay.
talk about eyeballs next week, so that should be really
Yeah.
exciting.
So if you have any eyeball questions, you just drop them down below.
There you go. And we'll see you next week. Bye.